Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Charles, and I am the host of the Kava and Kettlebells podcast. That is a podcast I run with my wife, and we talk about all things botanical related that are, non-alcoholic options. So things like kava, kratom, cannabis, along with living a healthy lifestyle and all things fitness. So if you're interested for that, please check out our channel along with our Instagram at kava_kettlebells. And today I am talking about the compound 3AD. Now, if you go back through my channel here on YouTube, you'll see that I posted an initial kind of 2-week intro to what 3AD is. And now that the cycle has passed, I am kind of going to give my overall thoughts on 3AD now that that cycle is done. And talk about some of the things that I saw, some of the things that I felt, and just my overall, takeaways from this compound. So to give a little backstory in case that, you missed the first one, you're just now coming to see this, 3AD is a, newer compound out there, and you'll hear it be called a prohormone, but in fact, it's more of a adrenal metabolite. So we think about prohormones, we think about the stuff like, 4-DHEA, 1-DHEA, and epiandrosterone. Those are, kind of big prohormones that are still left that are legal. Typically prohormones go through a conversion process in the body. So for instance, 4-DHEA or 4-andro, as you might see it, that converts eventually to testosterone. That's why you see guys run, 4-andro as a test base, with cycles, with harsher compounds. Now, some backstory on me. So I am 35 years old, about to turn 36 next month. So, getting up there, upper 30s. And I am currently on TRT, okay? So as far as what I run, to be 100% transparent, I do TRT at a dosage of 200 milligrams. And, what I do as well is I'll run growth hormone and MK677, and I'll alternate those. And as far as my dosages, I keep those very, very low. So with growth hormone, I never go above 2 IUs a day. And then with MK677, I don't go above 15 milligrams a day. And like I said, I'll run 4 months of GH, and then I'll switch to MK677 for a couple months and reverse back. And I more do that for anti-aging purposes and recovery, not so much, the muscle gain. So kind of my backstory is I grew up, kind of in this lifestyle, the bodybuilding lifestyle. And, back when I was growing up, and this kind of like college time frame, you could go to the sports nutrition shop and you can get, Superdrol and DMZ and Fairflex, all those, pro hormones back then that were legal, that were really designer steroids. So that's kind of the era I grew up in, used them here and there. Then as I got older, I backed away from the harsh compounds. And now, like I said, I just stick with testosterone, a little bit of growth hormone, MK677, and every now and then I'll run MENT, otherwise known as trestolone, because I respond really well to that. But, every once in a while you like to run something, and, if you're in the game, you you probably always have the curiosity of like, all right, what's out there? What can I add to the stack? And when I heard about 3AD, what stood out to me was the fact that it was, I don't want to say mild, but everything from the literature and from kind of the anecdotal evidence was saying that this was a, easy compound as far as on the body, right? So we're talking things about, blood pressure, cholesterol, liver strain, right? Because 3AD is not methylated. Again, it's a adrenal metabolite, okay? So it's not prohormone, it's not a designer steroid. And another unique thing about it was it's supposed to amplify anything else that you're taking, including TRT, right? So again, I'm on 200 milligrams of testosterone, And I wanted to see if 3AD would complement that and kind of help boost my TRT to kind of give it that, buzzword TRT plus, right? Also, Enhanced Labs were pushing this quite a bit. So, the guys, Tony Huge and all them, and they were saying based upon Bloodwork that, this also was not a suppressive compound, so that you can run it and then not have to run the PCT or, have a test base with it. And, the reason you run that test base with compounds is typically because it shuts down your testosterone, or it might, crush your estrogen, and you'll feel like shit, right? You get all the side effects that, you don't want. Irritability, bad sleep, erectile dysfunction, loss of sex drive, acne, all that kind of stuff. So again, with 3AD, what really stuck out to me was the fact that it was mild, but at the same time, it promised, pretty decent muscle growth. Now, as far as the dosing goes, so with 3AD, right now we're seeing kind of dosages across the board, but it does seem like I don't want to say the data, but the user feedback and the recommendations from the manufacturers are showing anywhere from 100 milligrams all the way up to 200 milligrams. I've seen some people going to like 250. So a pretty wide range of dosages, okay? And keep in mind, this is not the most, affordable compound. It's a little bit on the pricier side, but that's not to say, and I'll get to this here in a second, that you have to run high dosages, right? Especially if you're running other compounds, you could use this as a supplement versus if this is the only compound that you're running, yeah, you might want to bump it up so you see some of more of those effects. As far as what I ran almost, let's see, it was probably ended up being almost a 12-week cycle. Okay. So probably 10 weeks. And I started at 100 milligrams and I went all the way up to 200 milligrams at one point. And what I did was I used the bulk of the dosage pre-workout. So I wake up at 4 a.m. and I'm usually in the gym by 5 a.m. So what that meant was I was typically taking about 100 milligrams before I worked out, and then the rest spread throughout the day. Now, you don't necessarily have to do it pre-workout. And you can also do what's called kind of like a pulse dosaging. That means, let's say a workout day, you're going to do 150 milligrams. But then on your off day, you drop it down to 100 milligrams or 75 milligrams. You kind of do the whole pulsing method. And in theory, that allows you to extend the cycle, again, minimize side effects because you're bringing that dosage down, and overall just keep it a little bit more, quote unquote, safe when it comes to these compounds. Now, what company did I run the 3AD from? Well, I ran it from 3AD LLC. They're really probably them and Enhanced Labs and Iconic Formulations does have the transdermal version. But as far as the oral, right now we're seeing it from 3AD LLC and Enhanced Labs. And what I like about 3AD LLC is these guys are the OG patent holders, right? And they have a variety now of dosage options. So originally, I started with a white bottle right here, and you can see it's 3AD, and it's called the One, not to be confused with the One Pro Hormone, again from a decade ago, that was very DHT based. It's just what they're calling it, the One. Now, this came with 60 capsules and 50 milligrams for 2 capsules, so 25 milligrams per cap, along with black pepper extract to help the absorption. Now they have the black series, which is 50 milligrams per cap. So you're getting a higher dosage per capsule now with the black series versus the one that came in the white bottle. And this just, pretty much allows you to take a higher dosage without having to slam more pills. And honestly, I think this is the right move. I think it should be 50 milligrams per capsule because, I could see the use case for going down to 75 milligrams, but honestly, in my opinion, I think 100 milligrams is probably the baseline for the low dose that you should be running. And then probably 200 milligrams is max. Now, if you go back to my original video, you'll see that within about a week or two, I started feeling it. Okay. And how did I feel it? Well, in the gym, I started getting really good pumps like off the bat. I'm talking like, my first 2 sets, I was feeling hard, I was feeling dense, and the pumps just came very easy. Now, keep in mind, this isn't something like, you'll see things like, D-ball or Winstrol or some of the other pro hormones in the past. Superdraw technically was a steroid. It doesn't, let's be honest, man, that was a very harsh steroid at what it's supposed to be. But you notice that with like a lot of the harsher compounds is they react really quickly in the body, and you start, especially with orals, right? You'll feel that in a couple of days. Well, so with the 3AD, it took me, like I said, probably into the second week in the gym, I started really noticing those pumps coming on very strong, muscle density, and just feeling good. And back in the first video I did on this, the initial video, one thing too that I really wanted to stay away from was DHT-based compounds, okay? And the reason for that is because I had actually gotten a hair transplant back in February, and it's, all now starting to finally grow and, come in. And, long story short, I'm done with DHT compounds, even though I love them. I love Epiandro, I love Masteron, but, at this point in my life, especially after doing a hair transplant, I'm trying to minimize the DHT effects. So that was also a big selling point for me with the 3AD. As far as, my diet and everything, because, yes, it's hard to control everything. I will say the 3AD over the past couple months has been the only new thing that I have added compound wise. But what I did do was I increased my calories a bit. But, when I say a bit, I'm talking maybe 500 extra calories a day. And for me, typically I bounce anywhere from, 4,000 to 5,000 calories per day. So I'm about 6 foot, and I'm usually sitting around anywhere from 220 to 230. And what really stuck out to me was the recomp on the 3AD LLC. And by recomp, I mean that I was able to increase my calories, but I remained the same weight, but I got leaner. And I'll throw some pictures up, and actually I'm going to throw it up here right now, and so you can see this was taken kind of peak cycle, and I was shredded, man. Again, I don't compete. I'm not, cutting. In fact, I increased my calories. And, what the 3AD allowed me to do was, in my opinion, recomp at a much quicker and more effective rate than, just doing it without anything else. And obviously without, harsher compounds that, might have gotten me there faster, might have added more size or density. But, for me, again, I'm not trying to do a lot of crazy compounds right now. I'm more concerned about my health, managing my health and my blood work. And throughout the cycle, I felt great. In fact, so back up here a bit, I get my blood work quite a bit. So I get my blood work from the TRT doctor, and then I also go to the VA regularly and get my blood work. So I have 2 doctors overlooking my blood work on a consistent basis. Pretty much comes out to be about every 2 to 3 months doing my blood work and getting a look at it. On the 3AD, I had some of my lowest blood pressure readings. And I'm not saying that the 3AD was the cause of lowering my blood pressure. Typically, hereditary, I have higher blood pressure. And when I was on the 3AD, I had some of my best blood pressure ratings ever. I'm talking, 120 over 80 consistently. So the blood pressure spikes weren't there. And that's something that we see a lot with, the harsher compounds. So didn't mess with my blood pressure. And then also, fatigue. Nope. No fatigue, no tiredness. Didn't mess with my sleep. No lethargy. Also, shin pumps, things like that, the calf pumps that you get usually a lot of times when you run orals, not there. The pumps in the gym were there when I was, hitting the muscle that I was working, but no excessive pumps when I was out walking the dog or doing my cardio, anything like that. Also, what was interesting, and I'm about to pull up my Bloodwork right now. Let me grab it. What was interesting was the fact of my hormones when they did come back. So, like I said, 200 milligrams of testosterone. That's my TRT. That's all I'm running when it comes to testosterone. Nothing extra. Okay, I'm not sneaking in the test prop right now or anything like that. Okay, but this is my blood work, my most recent blood work from the VA, and they actually do test my hormones there, which is pretty cool too. But what was interesting is a lot of compounds you see will suppress testosterone, even when you're on testosterone, okay? And my test came back, I'm looking right now, at 1,153 NG/DL, right? So that's the way you read it. And so it was actually a little on the higher side. And again, I'm being honest, guys, that this is all I'm taking. I'm doing the test. So right now, I'm just on the GH. So I'm doing 2 IUs in the morning. And then I had added the 3AD. Okay. So my testosterone actually came back higher, which shows that, even, it's not super suppressive. And yes, I understand I'm running tests with it, and that's the point of a test base, right? But, I have ran my blower before on other compounds, one running test, and I have noticed the dip, okay? So again, that's anecdotal. This is from me. My AST and ALT were slightly elevated, right? So, and one thing too, I'm kind of a dumbass. I usually go get my blood work right after I work out. And if you lift weights, you might have seen this before, but your liver values, especially after lifting very heavy, will be elevated for a couple of days. All right. So I don't really take that into a major factor. And in fact, I do get scans of my liver, and everything's good to go. I just had an ultrasound on it a couple months ago, came back fine. I do that for just like a personal thing, but the blood work overall, and then last thing too, the cholesterol. Where was it? Back page. Yeah, cholesterol was good. It was in range. LDL, HDL, the ratio was good to go. And again, a lot of that too has to do with like diet and your cardio routine. And I also do take supplements for overall health. I take Arjuna bark for my heart. I do CoQ10. I do fish oil, and I do also beetroot powder, which is good for blood flow and blood pressure, but I use that for more pre-workout. But yes, it does have the benefits of lowering blood pressure. But overall, side effects, didn't feel them. And in fact, it was probably around, I think, week 7 or 8, my libido shot through the roof. Like, it was insane. Like, it felt like I had increased my testosterone, literally, right? I guess from the blood work, but it felt like I'd added maybe an extra 100 milligrams testosterone. I do have high libido. Yeah, ask my wife, but this was definitely, I noticed an elevation of libido. And in fact, I reached out to these guys and I was like, hey, is there reports of elevated libido? And, for me, it was very, very noticeable. And then also, this is hard to explain, but if you're a lifter, when you're in the gym and you're on something, you can just tell, right? Like in the mirror. And in fact, when I was on cycle, the 3AD cycle, I was getting a lot of people coming up to me and saying like, hey man, like you're looking great, you're looking insane, or what are you doing here, And yeah, it's summertime, so my tan's got a little darker, helps kind of the muscles pop more. But I was definitely getting more of like a 3D look when I was training. Again, nothing crazy. This isn't D-ball. This isn't Winstraw. Okay. This isn't Tren. But the trade-off is it's a pretty safe freaking compound, man. And it still has very noticeable effects. And this is coming from someone who's, ran anabolics off and on since, I was in college. And to take something like this and to have it give me effects that were very noticeable in the gym was pretty cool. Again, it doesn't it's not gonna blow you out of the water, okay, and it's not gonna blow you up muscle wise, but I was able to increase my calories, recomp, get leaner, maintain my weight, which shows you that I was, building muscle even, and I had no side effects. Okay. I didn't feel like crap. I wasn't breaking out. It didn't affect my libido, didn't affect my sleep. All the boxes were checked as far as being a feel good, safe compound. And I ended up, so I do have some capsules left right here, but I had a bunch of these bottles. So I'm off right now. And that's just because I still believe in, especially after like 11, 12 weeks, just to take some time off. But I am excited to get back on. And I think moving forward, I'm probably just, as far as like orals go, I'm probably just going to stick to this. I have no desire right now at my age. I'm not competing, not trying to be Mr. Olympia, to be running methylated compounds and all that kind of stuff. Again, I'm about to turn 36. I got longevity in my mind right now. And 3AD was just fun. It was cool. I was in the gym training. Again, was getting more of that 3D look. The pumps were great. And just even throughout the day, I just noticed more density in my muscles. And, strength wise, no, didn't really notice any strength increase. Being 100% transparent on that, like, didn't notice anything. But visually and just feeling wise, it was awesome. Like I said, it kind of gave you that kind of extra boost, when it comes to like confidence. And again, I really like the libido aspect, kind of spiked my libido some in the pumps. Like, I can't tell you enough about the pumps. Like, take this pre-workout, 100 milligrams per workout with, whatever stimulant of your choice or whatever you do. If you're a coffee person or if you like the cracked out pre-workouts, add 100 milligrams of this to it. And I guarantee you your pumps are going to feel much juicier and much better. Okay. So I definitely like the pre-workout. So overall, 3AD LLC, like I said, now they got the 50 milligram capsule bottle. They still got the 25 milligram. I think this is a better bang for your buck. And especially, like I said, I think at a minimum, you should be running 100 milligrams a day and you potentially go up to 200. I did notice when I went from 100 milligrams to 200, density wise with the muscles, I definitely saw that a lot more. But honestly, to even cruise on 100 milligrams, I think that would, be kind of a cool, like little light cycle, just to have a little something there on hand. 200 was a, definite jump though, when it came to kind of, that's that picture, I showed. That's when I was at the 200 milligrams. That's when like that density and that recomp was kind of at its fullest, I would say. So overall, I think if you are looking for something to run, this is worth a shot, even if you are a veteran in the space. Again, I'm been training for a while. I'm consider myself, somewhat, advanced physique wise. Like I said, I'm usually sit around 220, 230 under 10% body fat, which is hard to maintain. And I'm also, not going to lie in the fact that I do TRT and a little bit of growth hormone compounds here and there. But, for not touching anything else, I noticed quite the effects with this 3AD. And I think if you ran it solo, you would probably notice the same. But one thing I would probably look out for, even if you ran it solo for an extended period of time, would probably still do blood work afterwards and would maybe still run like a light PCT, depending on how you feel or what when the blood work comes back, what you see from that. Also, that reminds me, estrogen remained in range. Okay. But I also do anastrozole once per week to keep it in range. But even adding this, didn't notice increase or decrease. It was just the same. Okay. But yeah, I think if you are on TRT, it's a great addition. If you don't want to mess around with any of the harsher compounds out there and you want to keep your health in mind. And if you are, natty or natural and you want something to kind of, bring you over the edge, this is DSHEA compliant. Okay. So, and in fact, they're about to go on Amazon. All right. So 3AD is about to go on Amazon. They don't have hormonal products on Amazon, which again kind of shows you that this is kind of falls in sort of that middle range to where it's not like a natural test booster, but it's not a pro hormone or a designer steroid. To me, it kind of felt like in between. Okay. And I think just overall, like very cool compound. I would like to try the transdermal 3AD to kind of see if there's any, noticeable effects between the two. But personally, I hate transdermals. There is a pain in the ass, in my opinion, to put on. I'd much rather would just, pop a capsule, which is easier for me to do. But regardless, I would be curious to run the 3AD transdermal. So if you've ran it before, drop in the comments. Kind of like your experience that you had, the dosage that you ran. Typically with transdermals, you can run a lower dosage as opposed to the oral because of the way that absorbs. But, at the end of the day, it's definitely worth checking it out. The guys out there who run a bunch of compounds and stuff, you might scoff at it, but like, honestly, man, I mean, even just for a pre-workout, sort of blast to add to your cycle or whatever it is that you're running, I think it's worth it. Like I said, noticeable recomp effect, not placebo. Didn't mess with my hormones, no side effects. And while that taking a break right now, I definitely plan on getting back on this probably at the start of the fall, probably here like in another 2 months or so. So that's it, guys. Super impressed. Definitely enjoyed my run with the 3AD, and we will be hanging out soon. Okay. All right, guys. We'll see you.
Welcome to Kava and Kettlebells, where we talk about Kava, fitness, and life. Let's get Kava-fied.